ask me, oh, how come there aren't any great women composers? Or they'll say, there aren't any great women composers, are there? You know, as they already know the answer.
There have been great women composers. And for me, the real question is, why don't we know about them? Of course, there is the reality that in many societies, women didn't have access to education at the same rates that men did. But particularly in the 19th century, women were encouraged to learn to play music, and many of them studied composition. I think Clara Schumann is a really great example. She wrote a piano concerto when she was 14 years old that is, I think, a wonderful piece of music, and it's very rarely performed. And I'm not sure why mainstream musical organizations are still so afraid to take risks, especially on music like that, because I think most audiences that appreciate classical music would also appreciate Clara Schumann's piano concerto.
What we're working to do as this Women Composers Festival of Hartford is that any woman composer, any composer who significantly identifies as female, we want to promote their work. We want to connect them with other women composers. We want to connect them with performers. We want to connect them with conductors. We want to connect them so that people continue to hear their music and perform their music, and it just slowly builds on itself. That if we continue to show that this music is available, that these women are here, it gets the ball rolling. And then soon it's not even a thought. Nobody has to go out of their way to say, I'm specifically picking a woman to put on this concert. Instead, it's just going to be, I found this really great piece because somebody recorded it from the Women Composers Festival. And it just so happens that it fits with the theme of my concert this year. You know, you don't have to say, I can only program women on a women's concert.
Price moved to Chicago in 1927, and for many composers, embracing classical music was an important part of forging a new sense of self within society. But a new sense of self also came about through re-establishing a relationship with the past. The talented tent aimed to uplift their African-derived heritage and distance it from grotesque caricature. And for composers such as Price, racial uplift came in the form of cultivating a national American sound that both valued and integrated African American folk music.
We ran a community engagement project this year. It was a collaboration between our ensemble in residence, which is Cuatro Puntos, and a woman named Alika Hope, who's the founder of the Ray of Hope project.
Myself and Cuatro Puntos, we worked together to do a community outreach at a school around Florence Price. The festival invited us to have them play some of her instrumental pieces, and I would talk about Florence Price. And so to have a community outreach project where I actually have a string quartet integrated is phenomenal. And that was as a result of the Women's Composers Festival of Hartford.
We were able to get Tawny Olson to be our composer in residence and put on, this beginning snippet of her opera, essentially. In collaboration with an arts organization in Canada, she's able to build this opera into a full-length opera. So now that we've had a chance to work with her once, we're hoping to work with her again, if not next year, maybe the year after, and have the chance to do the US premiere of her full-length opera. So, when we put on these concerts with Tawny Olson, with our composer in residence, or even with Cuatro Puntos, with our ensemble in residence, it's not just an isolated event. That we want to start it, and each one we do is almost a preview of, okay, you've seen them now, and they get to grow their work, and then we can bring them back in and say, here's the full work, or here's what they're going to do next.
I don't really feel that being a woman has stopped me from doing anything as a composer. But for many years, I carried a burden around from my education in which male composers were privileged, female composers were not taken seriously. You get a certain message when all of the music presented in music history class or music theory class or in orchestration class is by men. And when people are asked, what are your 10 favorite composers? And they list only men. What are the great best 25 pieces of the last 25 years? And everything listed is by a man. And it was hard for me not to think, well, when I look around at these amazing women composers, Julia Wolfe, Kaya Sarayaho, or in Canada, there's some phenomenal women composers, Alice Ho, Alexina Louis, Hope Lee, Kelly Marie Murphy. And I would wonder, if the academia and the establishment are not taking these women seriously, these women whom I admire, who I would love to be as great a composer as they are, if they can't be taken seriously, if they're not part of the canon, how on earth am I ever going to make my mark in this world?
If we look around, even just in the United States, the numbers are really scary in terms of gender disparity. If you look at how many women composers the orchestras are commissioning or actively performing, the number is really, really, really low. And that's not even talking about worldwide. We're just talking about United States. To have an organization that is very committed to this goal to recognize all these women composers and also solely have programs of women composers is very significant, because the excuse for all these festivals and organizations who are not programming women composers is that they don't have quality work.
In order for this organization to be sustainable, we need support that we can rely on, which means we can't just continue to write grants again and again and again. We will write as much as we can, and we will tell our story as often as needs to be told, but we need people to decide that we are an important part of their personal composer community. We're an important part of the performing community. We are a valuable part of Hartford and the greater Hartford area. We aren't just in this one small spot, because we really do draw from, we've got participants from Pennsylvania, we have participants from the UK, we've got people coming from Canada. We really do have a wide audience and a wide appeal, and it's just a matter of getting people to recognize that we have existed for 18 years, despite our lack of funding, despite how difficult it is for us to sort of scrape together. We've been here for 18 years and we aren't going away. I promise you, we are still going to be here in whatever capacity we can. We're going to continue to hold concerts and do workshops for students, which is one of the most exciting things I think we do, that we bring in the next generation of composers, that they get a chance to work with these professional ensembles, that their work gets to be performed in these concerts, and right alongside, composers who are more established, who have a larger body of work, and they can talk to each other, and they can build their personal communities, and they can say that our festival brought them together.
Good.
Oh, yeah, no, let's do 7.
7, all right. 3, 4.
How did you feel about the 13? That
So when I really want that clinky sound of the wood.
This is a real exciting time because, I mean, with the whole Me Too movement this year and with the whole, debacle of our election in 2016, I think we're, a lot of people who didn't really think that sexism was an issue before are now seeing that, oh my God, sexism is huge. It's a big issue and we have to really be aware of it in everything, So that's really, I think, giving a lot of awareness to, women in all kinds of fields.
Giving women voice in any aspect, especially in cultural arenas, is not just important but necessary.
I would love a world where a Women Composers Festival is not needed, where maybe it's something we do for fun, but we certainly don't have to. But I think for now we still have to. It's something that we need to do to stand against the reality that mainstream organizations like the New York Philharmonic, the LA Philharmonic, the Chicago Symphony, the Metropolitan Opera, looked at in total, these places play less than 2% of their music every year is by women. And everyone knows this now. Everyone's talking about this statistic now. It's everywhere. So I think that's exciting, and I hope that we're looking at some real potential for change.